Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Warren Phillips, also known as the non-toxic dad, is a scientist and a father who has dedicated his life to promoting a toxin-free lifestyle. After completing his master's degree in geology, Warren worked as a scientist for several years. However, his focus shifted when he started struggling with unusual health issues and started noticing the harmful effects that toxins were having on his health. This sparked his passion for researching and promoting a toxin-free lifestyle. Warren discovered solutions to his health struggles through his healing journey and years of research. He realized that many illnesses and chronic conditions that people face are caused by exposure to toxins in our environment, food, and everyday products. Warren's mission is to help others achieve a healthy and happy toxin-free living. He believes that toxins should be canceled and that everybody can live healthier by making simple changes to their daily routines. Warren is an example, an influencer and speaker who shares his knowledge and expertise through various platforms, including Instagram at Non-Toxic Dad. Warren Phillips, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. And it was an honor to meet you the other day when I was with one of your other clients. So
yeah,
we really hit it
awesome.
off. So I'm
glad
to be
yeah.
here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to host you. It was really fun to do a virtual workout with my client and your really good friend, Garrett. Him and his family said they had a wonderful time hanging out with you over the weekend. And it was also nice in preparation for doing this. I got to see Garrett virtually yesterday. I saw his wife virtually today, Carrie, and I got to ask her point blank, like, okay, Warren, does he practice what he preaches? Is he actually living a toxic-free life? What do you think she said?
Like over the top, toxic-free life. Probably.
She said you guys do a very, very good job around there and take things seriously without going too much over the top. She did tell a story that recently you guys got a new car and basically had to like run the ventilation for like 2 weeks to get the new car smell out. Is that right?
Well, I personally won't buy a new car, but my wife, the difference between me and her is that she has, if there's certain things, she's willing to take the risk. However, I will mitigate that. So keep our babies out of it, buy it ahead of time, cook it, run it and not use the new car. But it's literally like, it takes to get rid of toxins in car. If we want to talk about toxins in car, it is a soup of chemicals. There's no real regulation on it. So when you buy that new car smell, the level of VOCs isn't regulated. So in my opinion, and I don't know the numbers on this, but when you get into a car, it'll probably exceed some air quality standard. That's how toxic these things are. And every car's different based on if it was built in Europe or the parts were built in Europe. European has different standards for VOCs than, say, the US, but it's a toxic soup. And if you're chemically sensitive, I wouldn't buy a car. Or if you're really looking for a non-toxic lifestyle, I would look to buy a car 4 years plus, right? I have an older truck. And I don't plan on changing it for that reason, because I just can't handle it. Other people, that's their toxic load. They live a really clean life and they choose, I'm going to off gas this thing as best I can. I'm going to drive with the windows down, which is what we did. The solution to pollution in this scenario is dilution, right? You're bringing in fresh air. You're going to cut the VOCs, down 100 times, right? I don't know the exact number, but it's a big number if you're circulating fresh air into that. But if you have a new car, you're circulating air, you're circulating toxins. So there you go. There's the practical, and then there's what I'm not willing to do, right? So exactly.
Yeah, well, it's ironic that is a smell that most people are seeking. They want that from the new car. And when you start to push in this direction and start to clean things out, it's amazing how sensitized you get back to some of these things. Like, I used to wear cologne every single day and didn't have any problem with it. If I go near this stuff, it's like, oh, way too much. Same with all the products I used to use. Like, it's pretty gnarly when you start to cut some of that crap out.
Yeah, I think colognes and fragrances, and there's tons of research showing this. They're in the exact research, they call them vicious. The level of how fragrances have penetrated our society, from trash bags to every laundry detergent, every cologne. It's even in food packaging, believe it or not, because it connects a certain smell, and they do testing to increase people's buying. There's this neurotoxic almost addiction that can happen because it fires stimulants in your brain. And all of this is chemistry, and it's almost as powerful as a drug. I would say it's as powerful as a drug. So fragrances are one of the things that really should be eliminated. And I don't know how, and they're so they're allowed to get away with this. It's really, really toxic. Tons of research showing it. And then there's what's nice about America. You can make your own choice, right? You can decide to breathe this stuff in or not. But the research is really clear when it comes to fragrances and the pervasive nature of fragrances, not just in deodorants, and it's in makeup. It doesn't need to be in makeup, but it all creates this experience, this emotional connection where you or I mean, you lived your life on connecting to the earth, to connecting to God, connecting to nature, connecting to other people, right? But you can live a life that's connected to chemicals and chemical fragrances. It's in my opinion, it's not adding value to your life, but it took a lot of pain and suffering for me to wake up to that win, Casey. And I know that you probably have your story as to why you're so focused on what you do, and how you connect with life and how you interact with the world. So we just live a different life, bro. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's awesome, which is fine. And you're right. Like, it's our suffering that then leads us to better paths. And we find up connecting, like you said, to the things that drive us. And we're definitely going to hear your story today. I do just have to say, knowing that you are friends with Garrett Gunderson, he's been my client for the better part of a year now. I've been able to train him, his family, best-selling author, obviously, writes about finances, but he's one of the most open, heart-centered people that is so kind and generous. Absolutely love that dude. He's going to be on the podcast soon. I know you're really good friends with Ben Azadi, another person in my sphere that I've been able to meet, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being. If I knew nothing, he's super heart-centered. These guys are very intentional. And I would just say, if I didn't know anything else about you personally, besides that you were friends with those two people, I know everything I need to know about you. Those are some really, really, really good people.
Yeah. And if you're not heart-centered and you're not adding value, he's just not going to be your friend. I mean, he'll be your acquaintance. Yeah. So, as you age, and I'm the same way, like I'm 48, so I don't really have time to be in relationships that aren't adding value. Right. So I really seek out people that I can connect with, that can be open and honest with, non-judgmental about how I live my life and choosing this non-toxic lifestyle. They actually, we become better by being around each other, right? Maybe I need a little more balanced at times, right? Maybe I shouldn't think about this. I have to say, I don't fear toxins. I just choose to avoid them as much as I possibly can within with a lot of effort. Like I'm reasonable effort, but I push it a little further. And I enjoy that. That makes me stronger. It makes me feel better about the congruency of how I live my life. But by no means do I ever judge anyone else or make fun of anyone because they don't. Like, whatever decision, Garrett thinks I'm crazy on some things, right? And so, but that's me. And he, of course, he's a comedian as well, right? So he's making fun of me at times, and I can enjoy that because we have this heart connection, and I choose to allow him into my inner circle because he's a good person. And I think that's really important when we talk about toxicity. This comes up a lot, Casey, is that, do you talk about toxicity, toxic relationships? I for sure find that as empowering as everything that I'm doing, and as non-toxic dad. If I'm around a toxic relationship that lowers my frequency, if you will, that makes me feel bad about myself, that's causing anxiety, that's mistreating me, that's talking down to me, that's putting their thumb on my life, or whatever it may be, I just don't do it, because it has the same hormonal response as cologne does in my life, right? The chemical fragrance. That relationship will change my body chemistry as much, if not more, than an exposure to something I can control, which is cologne. And I can control the relationships in my life. It's not always. Sometimes you got to lean into that pain and stand up for yourself in that moment, feel that visceral response of hormones when you face your fears and you face that conflict. But it's so important to get around people, like we're saying, is choose our relationships, choose a Ben Azadi, choose a Casey, right? Choose a Garrett. It's people that that are going to speak into your life, right? Or going to speak emotional toxicity out of your life, going to speak family toxicity out of your life, that are really going to help you in your financial toxicity, as Garrett does in your life, and thinking differently about that. Like, you can get in huge arguments. Garrett would say, don't follow the standard advice that's being told to you. Let's kill some sacred cows. Is New York's, what would the Rockefellers do? What do people who hang with finance, and there's a toxic way. So I have friends that are loaded, not loaded money wise, but are loaded in debt because of credit card debt. And that's what their family did, right? I'm just bound. I can't change because this credit card is that there's no way of getting out. I feel trapped and there's no way out. I'm just going to be in debt. I'm one of those people. These are exact words of friends from me, right? If they're listening to this, I'm sorry, I'm telling your story, but you just accepted that you're going to have credit card debt the rest of your life. That's financial toxicity. You created a belief structure that you can't overcome that, right? So you live your life and continually live in fear of finances, right? The same thing applies to toxicity, right? I am so toxic. I can't afford this. All these reasons you can't do it. And you live a toxic lifestyle and you don't think you can get out of it. You think you're just trapped because everything's toxic, right? If you say everything's toxic and take the responsibility off yourself not to change, the same with your finances, you're not going to move your life forward. And that's humans. I've done it, right? This is what we do. We want to preserve ourselves. We want to avoid pain. You know, this is how our brains work. But podcasts like this, right? This is the challenge, and wake you up and say, oh my gosh, he's right. You know, I'm not taking personal responsibility for my finances, and I'm not taking personal responsibility for my health. So these are some of the things we speak about, not because I trying to change you because I'm mad at you or angry that you're living the life that you live, or I'm not you, right? I wasn't raised like you were, right? So the some combination of who I am is based on all the experiences I had, and no one has the same experiences. No one has the same challenges, but there's this voice of hope, right? With finances, there's these voices of hope out there with your relationships in your marriage. There's voices of hope when it comes to how to raise your children in a non-toxic way. And here's this voice of hope that you can live a non-toxic lifestyle to inspire you to make some of those changes, to wash away the bad thinking that's holding you back from making a decision as you know you should be making deep down in your heart.
Yeah, I love that you took this conversation in that direction, that toxicity can come from lots of different things, whether they are physical or emotional. I don't know of many financial writers who also write about your personal value and love and all the values that, you know, Garrett talks about in his book. And the cool thing about all of this is when I really deep dive into this toxicity world, it's very easy to get overwhelmed and make me want to throw up my hands and say, like, what does it matter? Like, I'm in the middle of, 40 different houses that all have Wi-Fi's on, and the pollution, as you well know, in the valley can change and be bad around here around Salt Lake. But you make things so positive, and you always remind your listeners that they can choose what to do. You're just presenting the research and the information, and somebody can take that and say, like, oh, okay, I'll keep this in my back of my mind and I can do better next time. So I really appreciate that you have that way of sharing content with people.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we should all live that way. Like it should be a lesson for life. There's a lesson in that, is that I can't live my life based on the outcomes of other people, right? And neither can you. That's a toxic way of looking at life. If someone doesn't want to do something, I'm not going to get mad. If they're doing something, that's their choice. Like, so we attach outcomes in our relationships. We attach outcomes as, going online. That's one reason I didn't want to go online, Casey. I didn't want to add to my life. Like, I have a really good life. I love life. I love living. I wake up every day fulfilled and happy. This was a test, a challenge that was given to me, and I did it, and it wound up growing and having impact. And I'm like, okay, if I'm having an impact, then I should do it. And I believe in God. I believe in energy and following that energy. And if I see that it's causing impact, I'm going to do it. If I see that it's degrading and not adding value, relationships, toxicity, whatever it is, I just look at it as an equation, right? Maybe that's too analytical, even though I really try to come from my heart. I'm like, is it adding value to the world? Yes, keep doing it. Is it growing and escalating? Are people finding value? Yes, keep doing it, right? So, and we look at anything in our life, this relationship going online, am I doing too much with is this adding value by making my thumb sore, right? So that's why I threw my cell phone away essentially 5 years ago and wouldn't use it for any social media, because I felt like it was taking away and not adding to my life. Now I use it. I've spun that in my head, and now I use it as a tool to reach out and reach into the hearts of people and provide information that is life transforming, right? So it's just, I think there's a lot of lessons when it comes to toxicity and how you think about it, but it comes down to personal responsibility and how you interact with the world, right? And that goes back to our original thing. I choose to interact with the world from a place of love and not get offended, and understand that each and every one of us is living or trying in most cases to live the best life they can possible. And all I'm here to do is to help cheer them on in this one particular area of toxicity. And I love talking about the heart and emotional toxicity as well, because without that, I wouldn't be able to do this, right? So no one gets to a place where they can share openly and honest and be authentic without dealing with some of this emotional toxicity, and what people think of you and all those things that can derail you from living a life that is free and open, and you're giving and receiving love on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's part of what I can do with a podcast is my podcast host will allow me to take sound clips that are anywhere from like 15 to 60 seconds long, like highlights of some of our guests that we have on the show, that can edit it down into a shorter soundbite. You've already given me like 20 so far, dude. This has already been an amazing conversation. We do have to hear about your story. You have an amazing story that got you to where you were, and you were very, very sick, I would say.
Yeah, to the point where I wanted to end my life for sure, sick, so 25 years old, cleaning up hazardous waste for a living, have a master's degree in toxicology and chemistry from the geology department at University of Montana. Did research on the binding of heavy metals in the environment. We got contracts. We were an 8A disadvantaged business owners for the consulting firm. I actually just talked to my old boss the other day. I still can't wait to really sit down with him. I mean, I have talked to him, but we just reconnected probably after 10 years. So I really look forward to, he's changed a lot and I've changed a lot. And when I was in that environment, of course, we were doing our job. We were doing the best job possible, but we were cleaning up a lot of abandoned mines for the U.S. Forest Service. The Army Corps of Engineers oversaw our work. We had a federal used defense site cleanup, numerous other cleanups. And during that time, I was getting exposed to a lot of heavy metals, including lead and arsenic and mercury, a lot of lead and arsenic because of the types of mines. Different silver, it runs with, lead, and gold runs with arsenic, right? And mercury, right? So these different precious metals from turn of the century mines, and some of those mines probably did use mercury extraction. A lot of them were just using water, which is just a hydraulic extraction of just letting the elements separate out, and the gold's heavier it falls, and it's like panning, like watching Gold Rush is kind of how they did it back then. So in that whole process, I got very sick, but I also had some emotional toxicity going on at the time. I had some relationship toxicity going on. I had some physical toxicity. I had a whiplash. So a lot of these things added up to my body shutting down, becoming dysfunctional. So there's emotional toxicity, relationship toxicity for sure, and then also physical toxicity, and then the environmental toxicity. So all that was going on at once, and no one knew it was wrong. Why don't you just exercise? Why don't you, go talk to a therapist? But I didn't know what was wrong, and I was having all the symptoms of heavy metal toxicity. At one point, I did a abandoned lead burial site. Where they abandoned and buried lead batteries. They used to do that back then. And that's a form of lead that's not all lead absorbs, right? It won't absorb through your skin. There's different types of lead, but the type of lead in batteries is really absorbable when you can inhale it, and there's a different form that can get into your bloodstream more easily. And I remember having a hallucination that night. I never put two and two together, but that was an acute exposure. And I would, and then what doesn't come out, 90% of it gets stuck in your bones. So you never get rid of this stuff. It bioaccumulates, just like mercury bioaccumulates in fish. We're like big fish, and we hold these heavy metals. So through that process, became very sick, had to moved home in my parents' basement. It was October 30th of 2005, I believe, right around Halloween. I pulled up, and I thought, surprised my parents. They thought I was coming home the next day, and I opened the door, and I'm like, all my problems are going to be solved. It's just stress, right? So loves and kisses, hugs, and I was pretty dysfunctional then. We thought if I just went home, everything would get well. I went into their moldy basement. Now that I'm already sensitized to toxins and my detox pathways are already shut down, I'm back into a moldy basement in Pennsylvania at the bottom of a hill where, moisture is just going to move into that wall no matter what you do, right? Causing humidity. And I went from bad to wanting to take my life, sick, because dysfunctional chronic pain, fibromyalgia, weight gain increased, dysfunction increased, chemical sensitivities increased. Never thought I would, all hope lost. I was a devout Christian at the time. Reading my Bible no longer, became possible because of the level of anxiety and just no energy just to do anything, zero hope, just bad, chronic pain, you name it. Couldn't do anything I loved. I loved gardening and outdoors. I couldn't do any of that stuff. So I won't get into that story, but it was just really bad. And there was no access to information then. And, luckily, I had, in my heart of hearts, I knew it had to be something with my job, right? I knew it had to be something with the whiplash too, because, that did trigger a lot of neck and back pain. And I just had a lot of inflammation going on. But I got lucky enough to be turned on to some of the heavy metal symptoms in papers, because you couldn't find any of this stuff online. So someone handed me, this is what mercury does to your body, right? And I had a lot of those heavy metal mercury symptoms, a lot of lead symptoms, and a ton of mold symptoms at the time too. But there's these different neurological symptoms that go along with it, like abnormal shyness. That's a mercury symptom. Just random eye twitching, just these weird things, these neurological things as the mercury affects and degrades your nerve tissue. So, there I was, right? Hopeless. But then when I start eating and devouring that information and started heavy metal chelation properly and improperly at times, I started to feel better. And then as I started to feel better and know that that's the cause, my science brain kicked in, my hope started kicking in, and the steamroll started going the other way. I got healthier and healthier. And it took probably about 4 or 5 years. So I got healthy enough to think, maybe I could get married, maybe I could. And I remember having this conversation. I've never shared this on a podcast before, but I had this internal dialogue going on, because my dream is to be married and have kids. I mean, if you asked Garrett or anyone in my life, the probably one of the reasons I'm so just happy is because my dream has been given to me tenfold, like a beautiful wife, amazing 3 girls. I wanted girls, just that connection. There's nothing like it, brother. I mean, there's just nothing like it in my opinion. And to get that back has been the greatest gift. But I remember during that time when I was feeling better, and I hope this helps somebody, but I was still identifying as I didn't have any money, right? To get married or to have children or to start what I really wanted, right? I was still sick, carrying around a suitcase of vitamins to keep me going. I was better, but I was still sick. I still had this excuse. And I thought, there's no way I can get married. Because this is a single guy thing. Like my dream was to be married and have children. There's a lot of people like that, especially growing up in the era I did, right? I'm 48 years old. And at this event, and I'm meditating and I'm praying, and I'm making all these excuses as to why I will never have my dreams. I'm too sick. I have no money. I'm stinky. Who would ever want to be with me? Right. And I'm telling God that this is not going to happen. And I heard this voice that said, Warren, I want you to have it all. You're going to become financially sound again. You're going to be healthy, and you can have a wife now if you choose it. Right. This is what went on in my mind. Like, you can have it all now if you choose it. You're no longer sick. I'm moving you past that. Like, if you choose that right now, I will give it to you. I met my wife at that event, and we got married 3 months later. So nobody knows that story. Maybe a few people have heard that, but there's also this mindset shift that you have to have when you're sick. I'm no longer sick. And I talked about this on the podcast just previous that I recorded a couple of days ago. I understood that the universe wasn't working for me. God wasn't against me. He's for me, and he loves me, and he wants me to be happy. He wants me to be whole. He wants me to be financially sound. He wants to give me a family. It's part of his design, right? And when I was open to that love and stopped telling him that I couldn't, that I can't, which is telling myself that I can't, and I won't have it. I don't deserve it. Right. And when that voice said that, and I accepted that love, which is the force that I think that moves all of our good decisions and gives us the confidence to move forward, I accepted that positive from God. It's, call it a voice in my head, but I accepted it and believed it, that it was God speaking to my heart, and it changed everything for me. I was still had health challenges moving forward, but I always had that. And look at my life today, right? 3 beautiful children, financially sound. And I made wise decisions. I didn't make toxic financial decisions. I didn't get here because God just magically blessed my life. No, he encouraged me, said I could have all that stuff if I chose it, right? If I accepted it and made the decisions on a day-to-day basis to take me there, listening to other people. Like Casey, you help people with back pain and all kinds of things. If they listen to you, if they take the steps, one session with you isn't going to fix, a lifetime of bad decisions of sitting around and not moving, right? So it takes time, just like anything else. But if you say, my back pain is never going to go away, I just accept this back pain, and you don't try anything, even if it doesn't work, it moves you to that next decision, and you try again and you look for a better result.
Yeah, dude, very well said. I think I can speak for our listener to say that all of us were in goosebumps hearing that story. That is so amazing. Okay, so talking about toxins, I feel like the way we talked about it in the introduction was probably a nice way to think about it. So let me find it. We're talking about toxins in our environment, our food, and our everyday products. Is that the best way to kind of separate those out into 3 different kind of categories that we can be thinking about these things?
I mean, the most common, the way that folks talk about it is toxins in our food, in our air, and in our water, right? Those are just like the 3 big areas. But I like what you said too. It really, there's lots of ways to discuss toxicity, like you said, right? And I like to look at just, I don't like the cliche things. I don't have to say that. Maybe I should just compartmentalize everything that I share. But I like to share from a heartfelt space. Is what are your listeners challenged with? Like, what are the type of toxins that are in their life that they're concerned about that I could help with? Like, that I could give some takeaways and say, hey, Warren, what do you think about salt? Right? What do you think about, some of the things I'm doing in biohacking for my health? Like, is grass-fed meat really matter? Is it toxic as whatever? Like, what is your audience? What are they facing in toxicities? I know a lot of them probably are living a more non-toxic lifestyle. I can't see many people listening to this podcast that are showing up at McDonald's every day, that their level of education, understanding, nothing wrong with you if you decide to go to McDonald's. You believe in that. That's where you're at, and you think it's fine. I disagree, but I'm not talking down to you. Like, oh, you go to McDonald's. Like, I don't care. I don't, so let's move on with our day. We can agree to disagree, but your listeners have a different perspective. How can I help them as far as environments, their bedroom, like biohacking, like where can I add value?
Yeah. So let's use that as a framework for this conversation, and let's start with environment, just for the sake of ease of conversation. And when we're talking about environment, I guess I'd like to focus on the home, because we spend so much time at home, especially post-pandemic. What are the big rocks? What are the major things that is going through your mind when you're walking into somebody else's home as far as sources of toxicity when we're talking about environments of our home?
Yeah, the one that's going to get you the most is going to be molds. Mold, bad water damage type molds. When I walk into a home, I sometimes still get symptoms. I'll get tightness around my head. I'll smell it, but I'll get foggy, or after being at someone's house, I won't sleep for days. And that could be, and biotoxins might not even smell the musty smell, but there's a lot of homes I walk into that have a musty smell just because of plants and other things that are in their home, but it isn't putting off the bad molds that produce mycotoxins. So I think if you're in a home that has water damage, that has black mold sitting in a wall, and you're not addressing it properly and contaminating your home by using what we did back in the day, not only personal protective equipment and handling, that well, you need to set up containments so that you're not in with negative air, which keeps the toxins flowing out of the house and not into your home and contaminating more. So I think mold is a big issue in homes. I think the volatile organic compounds are big issues in home, with fragrances, wall paint, new furniture, right? The regulations where they slather things in flame retardants that are highly carcinogenic, which is a longevity issue. That stuff leads to cancer, increases your cancer risk 1,000 times when you're exposed to some of these over and over again. You don't know, your mattress has it, right? Between the VOCs from the foam and the flame retardants that keep that foam from burning you, the brominated flame retardants, like all that stuff add up pretty quick. So I always look for the volatile organic compound sources, pull out all the fragrances, the Febrezes, all the things that contain artificial fragrance, anything that can give off a volatile organic compound, get that stuff out of your house, because it just lowers your frequency. It's something your body has to deal with on a day-to-day basis because you're in there. Ways to negate that until you can afford is crack your window and keep your humidity below 50%, else you're going to grow mold, right? So just like we talked about the new car, right? Don't recommend it, but if you do, keep your windows down, right? And make sure you get your loved ones to agree with you on that, because you don't want to fight about a new car smell. If you're me, you're going to, right? Blow it on the windows. So don't do that. It's no good for us, our babies.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a really good start. I love that. What about the products that we use inside the home? Things like detergents, fabric softeners. Or are we also really trying to focus on fragrance to lead us in the right direction?
The nastiest stuff in there is, the chemicals get into your skin, the surfactants, at least they're being rinsed out. But I think the chemical fragrances cause the biggest damage, right, to our life, right? So, me personally, and it's such an easy switch. Like, you can use borax, you can use vinegar and borax in your wash, or just vinegar or just borax. There's so many ways to clean your clothes that's so much less expensive with zero fragrance. If we got to get over our addiction to fragrance, right? But again, the fragrance industry, and they've done a lot of testing to keep us addicted to this stuff. The reason we like that downy, fresh smell, that mountain breeze, that snuggle, with your blanket, is that they're emotionally selling you. Like, this has nothing to do with reality. This has nothing to do with what's good for you. It has nothing to do with what's going to add value to your family. It has everything to do with them getting you addicted to an idea that this is important for you to be happy, to have that snuggle freshness, right? To relieve the pain of static cling. Oh my God, my life is over. Static cling, I can't have it. You found a solution that's going to kill you, right? It's going to steal from your life. They're selling an emotion. They're selling a convenience when you don't need it. And nature has provided all the cleaning power that you need, right? All the de-static that you need in a wool dryer ball, for crying out loud. You're going to save money. You're going to be healthier. Your kids aren't going to be, brain fogged from these fragrances and chemicals that cause brain inflammation, right? So it comes down to that stuff. Do you want a more powerful and impactful life? That's how I look at it. How do I do that? I'm not going to, some of this stuff if you're a strong, your mom didn't fill you up with toxins and you have a strong constitution genetically. A lot of people say, I've done all this stuff and I'm happy and I'm 90 years old and smoke cigarettes and I'm loving life and I'm smarter than you. And you may be, right? But the stats are against you. Not everyone has that constitution. And as we disobey nature and chemicalize our bodies, we're going to get weaker and weaker genetics as we go. Both of my grandparents, 90s to 100, right? And they didn't eat well, but they ate organic their whole life. They had their own gardens. They didn't have industrial farming. And they went through some of the most emotional trauma anyone could ever go through, with a depression and world wars and all that stuff, right? And poverty and coming over on a boat and not having a job and, working at a factory that was probably toxifying them, but they still did fine. The amount of toxins that are in our home and we're putting on our bodies now with this chemical revolution far exceed what our grandparents at 48, so much different than of today, had to deal with. But now someone like me, I was off of some of that stuff, but a lot of this stuff hit the fan as I was growing up, right? The toxic cereals, right? And the food colorings and the processed cheese and I believe in Crystal Light because you believe in me, sucralose or whatever that one is. I think it might not be sucralose. It might be the other one, NutraSweet. But all those commercials and what they got away with, even with smoking and all of that, right? It was the start. It was our generation that really got chemicalized. You know, I'm a Gen Xer, I believe.
Yeah, I was just kind of laughing to myself, thinking like, gee, Warren, wouldn't it be a really bad situation if other industries were also trying to profit on us and get us addicted to different things? If that would happen, we might be really, really sick, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we would
Sad.
be.
We would be. Go walk around in the mall. Okay, so staying inside the home, we're going to talk about food here in a second, but let's talk about food preparation. This to me seems like a big one. We're now applying heat to our food, generally speaking, and that to me would signal you're speeding up reactions. Obviously, you're cooking food. So, what do we need to know about the cooking of food in our home? How can we make that less toxic than it currently is?
Yeah, I wouldn't claim to be a massive expert when it comes to the releasing of nutrients. There's some things that are better if you cook or steam, right? There's some that it's better because it knocks down some of the protective mechanisms of the vegetables so they don't get eaten and you don't eat too much of them, right? So I'm not a guy that eats all raw vegetables, or I'm not afraid of what's in, is it phytates, the big one where everyone yells and screams with kale and all that?
Phytates, oxalates is another big one that's
Oxalates
pretty
is the
popular
word.
right now.
You got it right. So I don't live in fear of that stuff because I'm like a bug. You know, I'll eat some of it and then I'll go eat something else that has less, right? And so I eat raw vegetables all the time. Someone says too many oxalates, you need to take the skin off, but there's also healthy things inside the skin. So I like to try to do everything in moderation and not just juice and, you know, go raw vegan, right? If I did, nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to, if I did that too long, I could get oxalate toxicity, right? Because I'm just juicing too much. But for a season, it would really rest your digestion, right? It'd be really good for you, right? It's like no big deal, right? But if I cook meat, you bet I would side on just cooked and almost rare, right? Because it doesn't denature the proteins. Like that's the best way to eat it. It's hard to convince people of that though, right? Because they don't like the texture and they don't like the blood. They don't like the way it looks. Last night, used the infrared, you know, seared it on both sides. It was raw in the middle, right? But I got everyone to eat it and it tasted amazing. And I used infrared, if you can, on your grill. It doesn't char as much, right? And that penetrates and cooks the meat, but it doesn't leave the char, which is carcinogenic. Can your body handle a little char? Absolutely. Eat it with, you know, some antioxidants or eat some berries, right? It'll offset the oxidation that's causing, because that's what's going on. So you need to balance this stuff out. I believe in eating berries, right? Because they're meant to be eaten. They're fruit, right? But so I'm in, you know, I'm not all carnivore. I'm not raw vegan. You know, I eat a diet that's in season. I eat a diet that's healthy. I try my best not to overcook things and within my knowledge, but I'm not the scientist going to say, hey, Warren, you know, never cook your broccoli because you get rid of this, and this, and this. So I don't know that. I just try to live a balanced lifestyle in nature, in season, in time, not overcook my food, convince my family of the things that I do know about how to cook, and, you know, debunk some of the things. Can my kids eat oats every once in a while? Yeah. Sprouted oats every once in a while, but they're not going to have that every day. Right? It's going to spike their sugar. It's going to get them addicted to those foods, because whatever we eat on a daily basis, we'll get addicted to it. Right? So I try to just vary their diets. I care more about them than I do myself, to be honest with you, but I do eat clean as much as possible. Do I eat a cracker that may have glyphosate in it every once in a while? Potentially, but not often. Right? But you're going to find nothing conventional in my home. Right? You're going to find almost everything's going to be organic, but that doesn't mean it's clean, bro. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's clean. It doesn't mean it doesn't have levels of toxicity. So
Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you about. Before we jump to that, though, am I safe to assume that like cast iron is really good to cook with? Slow cooking would be better to cook with, like you said, not overcooking the meat, like, and those kinds of things, like older ways of preparing food. Am I right in assuming that those are safer than, you know, buying the latest like nonstick pan, or again like overcooking food?
yeah, for sure. Like we use stainless steel. It's our best. Our stainless steel and you know, some ceramic, and then obviously cast iron. Those are all the things that we use in our home, right? The funny thing is I just found out from Lead Safe Mama, who I had a conversation with, a really, really brilliant lady when it comes to this area of expertise. Like, it's hard to impress me, but she's a very smart lady. And she, and I knew this in my heart of hearts, but 18-0 doesn't mean zero nickel. It just means it's enough for them to report that there's no nickel in it, but there's still nickel, right? So 18-0 stainless, and I'm just always being honest. That's where I just learned this, and I'll continue to share this information. You don't want to buy 18-8. You don't want to buy 18-6 stainless. You want to buy 18-0, because stainless, if you're cooking on 18-10 stainless, say, you have a lot of nickel in there, and you have an 18-10 spatula and a fork, and it's 18-10, and you're just whacking on that, you're getting nickel exposure. I've seen it back when we did testing, because I ran a large health clinic, right? And coach practitioners for 20 years on this stuff. We would, in get all the patient data, we'd see a lot of nickel, high nickel in our patients when we'd run heavy metal challenges on them. And the source that we could always came back to was stainless steel. So you do want to go for 18-0. It's not as nice. It's not as shiny. But you want 18-0 stainless. I have 18 there. My silverware looks like crap, but it's 18-0, right?
Cool.
So that's what I recommend when it comes to cookware. There's some good ceramic brands out there as well. That can be tricky, but some of the higher end brands, you just got to make sure that, they verify that they're lead free, which doesn't mean lead free, but low amounts of lead and cadmium and other things that can show up in there. But again, you got to be careful with the heat when it comes with ceramic, unless it's like pure ceramic all the way through. That's usually very inert. There's only one company out there that does that. It's a little harder to cook with. So I always default to stainless steel and a little bit of ceramic. We have one ceramic pan, and then the cast iron.
Cool. Yeah, I really appreciate that. That's a very practical list that anybody could walk away from and start moving in that direction, which is great. Let's talk about food. We've already mentioned some foods. What are the biggest offenders as far as toxic food that you really want people to avoid?
Well, there's this big seed oil debate, right? And and it's a tough one, because there's two huge sides to this. And is it best to avoid seed oils? Yes, especially the highly processed industrial seed oils, which is going to be the top three are soy, right? Canola, and I was going to say sunflower can be really bad, but it can also be expeller pressed and cold processed and not as bad, right? So it depends on where that oil is coming from, the level of toxicity it's going to have on your body. But let's just talk about the industrial seed oils of soy, rapeseed oil as well, right? Which is a deviant of canola oil, right? It's not GMO'd. GMO is the canola plant. Rapeseed was typically was just a hybridization of the canola plant to create rapeseed oil. So anyway, long story short, those ones, when they're processed industrial wise, I mean, they would be better off being used in a car than they would be putting your body, and your body really can't use them. And now you're talking cellular function. Now you're talking building blocks of cells and brain tissue and all cells in your body, including your brain cells. So supplying your body with something that doesn't build those cells, that's inflammatory, that still contains trans fats, it's just not a good idea to put those things in your body, right? And they put it in everything because it's cheap. It adds that fatty taste that people like, so you get the benefit with none of the cost. And it can take high heat at that point because it's been so processed, but it's just processed it into a completely dead food, and it's bad for you, right? If you get a little bit in a cracker once in a blue moon, can your body work that out? It'll take some time, believe it or not, right, to work it out of your body, but it's not going to kill you in that moment. But if you're loading up and cooking with vegetable oils, and that's in a plastic container and it says canola oil on it, and you think that's safe, it's just not. And there's no science that can back that up. There's people being paid probably to promote and say that it is safe, but it's just not safe, right? And a canola oil is just not canola oil. Is all canola oil bad in my opinion? Yeah, for the most part. But an organic cold expeller pressed, is that better than the canola oil that's sitting on the shelf, in a plastic jar? Yeah, it's better. Is it great? No, but it's way better, right? So there's this, you go to Whole Foods and they're using organic canola oil. Do I eat it? No. Would I eat it once in a blue moon? Maybe. But the canola in there is a little bit better, probably a lot better. I mean, I don't know the science well enough to give you a little or a lot, but I know it's better. We'll just stick with that. Than the industrial seed oil that's definitely GMO, right? Organic is not GMO, right? That's the only thing, GMO does for us is it's non-GMO, right? So if it's non-GMO canola oil, I would be more suspect. But so I kind of have a balanced approach to that, but at the core of it, they're right. It's one of the most toxic foods you can put in your body because it's affecting you at the cellular level, the very building blocks of your cells and your lipid membranes. And we've been talking about this for 20 some years. Now it's becoming cool. Now it's becoming a statement. But when we first started talking about this information, it really did fall on deaf ears, right? It's just like, you guys are nuts. There's no way that they'd be giving us foods that make us sick. Now, everybody that's listening to this stuff, they're like, they don't trust anyone at this point. So, and you can say trust the science. And what does that mean?
What does that mean? Yeah, no, it's a terrible story. We have tagged this video probably 100 times on our podcast. I'll tag it again today in the notes, the how it's made section of the episode of that show they used to show. They show step-by-step the process of making canola oil. It is terrible. For you to say it's probably better in your car, I would debate whether it's even good to put in your car.
Yeah, because what's going to come out,
Oh, it's disgusting. It's absolutely crazy. And we know that people who cook with this stuff, fry chefs, they have a disproportionate number of cases of lung cancer because they're inhaling this stuff as it's being heated up. It's absolutely terrible. We've hosted Chris Kenobi on our show twice. He's written extensively about this, where he blames the seed oils much more than the sugar for what ails us as a society. And he makes a really strong case that is.
And I'm with him, right? So if you're going to give me a tablespoon of sugar or a tablespoon of canola, I would 1000% grab that sugar all day long than putting that industrial seed oil in my body. At least it's an anti-nutrient, but at least my body can process it and get rid of it. It's going to come at a cost, but that canola oil is going to have it's going to cause inflammation. It's hard for my body to remove something it doesn't recognize, nor can it use. So it's wreaking havoc. It has a half-life in your body for, I don't know, like 180 days or something crazy. So
I thought it was close to 650, something like that.
It depends on the influencer that's talking about and how pissed he is about canola oil. So again, I mean, you asked me, right? I'm not going to sit there and memorize how canola oil is made. I just know based on the science that I've read, it's just one of the worst things. I mean, I'd rather eat sugar. Do I say sugar? Is that another inflammatory cause? Of course. So many people are addicted to sugar, right? Because it causes that dopamine spike. So do we avoid sugar in our home? Absolutely. Like the plague? No. At one point in my life when I was sick, I avoided everything that caused inflammation like the plague, everything, because that's what I had to do to get well, right? So I had a lot of motivation. Now I can get away with eating some organic potato chips, even though there's really no good ones out there. That's a tough one, right? The ones that are okay, have expeller pressed sunflower oil, not going to kill you if you eat a few, right? Because it's not nearly as denatured, in my opinion, as the canola and the rapeseed and soy and things of that nature. But still, it's probably not the best and the highest quality fat for your body, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, eating tablespoons of fresh pressed organic olive oil from Greece, right? It's just, there's no comparison.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my next point was going to be. Just look, this is a really easy thing to sub out. Cook in butter, find a good quality olive oil. It's really not that much more expensive. You could fix that one real easy, but just go through your pantry and get rid of seed oils. They are absolutely disgusting.
Lard, absolutely disgusting. With lard, grass-fed lard. And, there's a lot of that, back 20 years ago when I was sick, none of this stuff existed, right? We were completely a place of convenience. We lost all the ancient practices, if you will, like how we used to use lard and then we moved to Crisco, right? It's sad because lard was bad and is going to make you sick. And here's Crisco, right? And everybody knows that was a really bad decision, right? Trans fats. Oh my gosh. But they told
Not
us
the
it was
best.
better. Told us it was better for us. So you can see why, everyone's so skeptic. It's just like they'll think that, 10 years from now, all of it will be bad or whatever, right? Which isn't true because we've evolved with this stuff. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our cellular makeup. That's what's neat about, we were raised foraging and eating meat, right? For the most part, for most of us, maybe someone's more fruit oriented if you're from the tropics, or closer to the equator, but you still ate meat. I mean, you still, ate monkeys and aardvarks or wherever you lived, right? Probably lemurs, things that we couldn't do today, but it was food, right? And the most of these animals, especially grass-fed animals, if we're going to grass-fed, they have the 4-to-1 ratio, which is what our cells are made up of omega-6 to omega-3. And that's what butter is. So it's one that's your body can't use or recognize, right, to create a healthy cell. And here's one that has the perfect ratio to make healthy cells and doesn't cause inflammation. So, and you're defending this when you could have this. Like, it's a pretty simple transfer of idea. And butter, grass-fed butter, I mean, holy cow, it's like a perfect food. Cheese.
It's perfect. It's like cheese. I eat it like cheese.
Yeah, 4-to-1 ratio again. Meat that feeds off the energy source, right, of the sun. 4-to-1, the fats in the meat. So the very things that produce life in us is now being told that it's bad. So I can understand why people go conspiracy. I think it's more money driven than it is trying, it's just a bunch of people trying to daisy chain ways to get rich, right? Or which is a sad way to live. Let's be honest, right?
It is.
As you've experienced, it's about relationships and people. And I feel bad for that. I feel bad that they're trapped in a lifestyle that it's not going to produce. Like, go travel somewhere where there's poverty and look at the happiness that they have, and they have nothing, but they have everything. So wake up, world, this isn't what it's all about. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Last one I just want to circle back on is the environmental products. We talked about this already as far as fragrances. Is there anything else you want us to know about the products that we use or the things that we put on our skin?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you have these complicated things to read, there's so many databases out there now, like EWG. They're really, really good at explaining a lot of the different names and things that we don't understand. There's lots of apps today that you can find and use, because it is confusing out there, right? But so anything that says fragrance or perfume, just get rid of it, right? I had a hair gel that I've been using for a while that was super clean, all organic, high rating on EWG. Been using it for years, and they switched it from essential oils to perfume because I smelled it, right? I'm like, wait a minute, so now I'm using this, multiple clay based, hair gel, right? Which probably does have a little lead. Got to be careful with that, but it doesn't absorb as much. Most lead molecules aren't going to go through your skin. So you got to be careful if you're ingesting clay, for sure. But putting it on your hair is relatively, I would say, for me, based on being an environmental cleanup guy who studied lead and lead toxicity. I'm not the best and the brightest. There's other experts, like I mentioned earlier, that understand this better than I do, but I'm okay with it, right? So, but I'm not going to put that fragrance on my body anymore, right? I don't want to smell that on a daily basis. So it's hard, man. You got mascara and all these different things that we've tied into with beauty, and you can use natural things, right? You can use activated carbon or charcoal. You can use plant-based colorants for your cheeks and like all this stuff. And there's great companies that do that. I don't want to name companies because I don't like promoting anyone. I just trying to steer clear of all that to be connected to brands, because then I can't connect. If they make a mistake, then it comes back on me. But there's so many good skincare lines, like whatever you put in your skin, it's like eating it. Just think of it that way. So would you eat those chemicals? No. Would you let your kid eat those chemicals? No. Then don't put it on their skin. Find another find something else, right? If you can use coconut oil, you can use shea butter, which gives you sun protection. You can just use straight natural things without all the fanfare. And these big promises that it's going to anti-age you and orc value and all these things. Just use things in nature and eat clean. You won't age that quickly, you know? Yeah. I mean, I went through hell and back, and I'm 48, and I definitely don't look older than 48.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So, and it's not like I lived a really rough lifestyle before that. Right. I mean, I drank Mountain Dew, you name it, I did it. Right. So it was a long road. So just avoid that stuff and get back to simple. I mean, and if you can't eat it, don't put it on your body.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is wonderful advice. And I think this has been an awesome conversation with, again, a lot of practical tips that people can be thinking about. So really appreciate the time that you took to be on our show today, Warren. Really appreciate your content. Where can people go to find you, to connect with you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, all the social, my nontoxicdad.com, but, you know, at nontoxicdad on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you can consume information. My promise is to make it educational and entertaining and definitely well thought out, so that I'm bringing something of value to you so that you can slowly switch, right, to something else. Like I did one on craft cheese, which people overdo the plastic part, right? I brought the reality with it, right? And some people still love their craft singles. You know, I used to fold them up and eat them while watching Gummy Bears and He-Man and Sheer as a kid. And so, but I'm not going to eat that stuff. So that is my promise when you go to my channel, and I'm going to turn up the funny and just make it so that we can educate and share this information so that we all can choose non-toxic lifestyle, which will affect these larger companies for sure.
Yeah, well, we lost a lot of those companies as potential sponsors of our show today. We're so grateful for your work. I love your content. You do such a great job, and I would say that all of the things you're trying to accomplish with your social media, you are accomplishing. It's funny, it's engaging, it's well thought out. Like you said, you do a great job presenting the research in a way that feels helpful and not overwhelming. So thank you so very much, Warren Phillips, for all of the work that you've done, all the suffering you've gone through to then get to the other side and help other people with it is really wonderful. And we're just so grateful for you and your work, and for taking time out of your day to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Casey. Same to you, brother. I love what you're doing and love how you're helping people. And I'm glad that we connected through Garrett. It's been a huge blessing, bro. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much as well. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.